This is the third video in a series of videos outlining one of Norman Geisler's more intriguing arguments for God. The first established our definition of terms, and the second explained the 6 foundational principles of reality. If you missed those videos, I'd recommend going back and watching them before moving on. With that said, we're finally ready to build the structure of the argument. As a quick refresher, we'll briefly revisit the 6 principles of reality. 1. Being is. 2. Being is being. 3. Being is not non-being. 4. Either being or non-being. 5. Non-being cannot produce being. 6. Being causes being similar to itself. From these principles, many other undeniable conclusions can be drawn, such as the following. 7. A being can be either necessary or contingent, but not both. This is based on the principle of excluded middle. 3. 8. A necessary being cannot produce another necessary being. 3. The opposite of this is reducible to a contradiction because A necessary being by its nature cannot come to be or cease to be, and B, the being that is caused by a necessary being comes to be, which is contradictory. 9. A contingent being cannot cause another contingent being. 3. This is because a contingent being is one that could not be, i.e. could be nothing. And if it caused another being, then non-being would be producing being, which is contradictory. 10. A necessary being is a being of pure actuality, with no potentiality. This is so since a necessary being has no potentiality to not exist. If a necessary being exists, then it must exist necessarily, with no possibility not to exist. 11. A being of pure actuality cannot produce another being with pure actuality. The being that is produced by a being of pure actuality must have both actuality and potentiality, for this created being has the potentiality not to be, which pure actuality does not have. 12. Every being caused by a being of pure actuality must be both like and unlike its cause. 6. It must be like its cause in its actuality, and it must be unlike its cause in its potentiality. And what is both like and unlike its cause is similar or analogous to it. 13. I am a contingent being. This is so since I undeniably exist. 2. And I am neither a necessary being nor an impossible being. I am not an impossible being since I do exist. And I am not a necessary being because I change or come to be, which a necessary being cannot do. Hence, I am a contingent being, but only a necessary being can cause a contingent being. 9. Even a pantheist, who claims to be identical to God, admits that he or she came to be in that state of enlightenment, and thus was not always in it. 14. Therefore, a necessary being of pure actuality exists that causes me to exist. 15. This necessary being is a being of pure actuality, with no potentiality, and has certain necessary attributes. A. It cannot change, is immutable, since it has no potential for change. B. It cannot be temporal, is eternal, since that involves change. C. It cannot be material, is immaterial, since that involves change. D. It cannot be finite, is infinite, since it has no potentiality to limit it. E. It cannot be divisible, is simple, since it has no potential to be divided. F. It must be an uncaused being, since it is a necessary being. A necessary being cannot be caused to come to be, so it can't be caused. Nor can it be self-caused, which is a contradiction. Hence, it must be an uncaused being. G. It must only be one being, since there can't be 2 or more infinite beings or 2 or more beings of pure actuality. There is no way they could differ in their being, for they are both the same kind of being, and beings cannot differ in the very respect in which they are the same. H. It must be infinitely knowing, omniscient, since I am a knowing being that it caused to exist, and a cause cannot give what it does not have to give. 6. I. It must be all-powerful, omnipotent, since it is infinite and it has the power to cause a finite being to exist. J. It must be an absolutely morally perfect being, since it causes moral beings to exist, and it cannot share what it does not have to share. 6. K. It must be a personal being, since it made personal beings, and the effect is similar to its efficient cause. Number 6. Now one infinite, uncaused, personal, morally perfect, all-knowing, all-powerful being that caused finite beings like itself to exist is what is meant by a theistic God. Hence, a theistic God exists. So the theistic worldview is true, and everything opposed to a theistic worldview is false. Number 3. Such as deism, finite godism, pantheism, panentheism, polytheism, and atheism. Though this argument is powerful, it is more abstract than we generally tend to think about causes and effects. Some key aspects of the argument may need further clarification. In particular, we'll elaborate on why a purely actual being has no cause for itself, why a contingent being cannot cause another contingent being, why there can only be one purely actual being, and why pure actuality entails the attributes that it does. In our next video, we'll address these difficult topics and put the finishing touches on our structure.